go into a protective crouch right away by trying to just finish the job in the first 3 minutes, you know. Give you your money's worth, and then the rest of the night is on, you know. So it's
I believe we are all satisfied. And we'll follow you into hell, sir. You think you started telling stories in songs, even though you're doing cover bands, but you would pick out what the individual cover songs were. Did you view performances of an individual show with a story element to it, or were you just trying to rock it out and impress the chicks?
Well, you know, when you're starting, I mean, you're trying to sound half-assed all right, and not embarrass yourself in front of, you know, the whole high school or the CYO or the YMCA. And so that's a big motivation is, you know, you're 15, you're feeling the strange empowerment that comes with the fucking guitar, you know. It's like all of a sudden you're the prettiest girl in school, you know. and that's how people are looking at you. And it's very strange coming from sort of where you came from, where you are at the very, 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 very low end of the totem pole. And, you know, the difference a few songs and a band makes, you know. But, what the fuck were we talking
Well,
about?
I know. This is uncharted territory for both of us, you get it, okay, I read the book just like you guys all did, at the same exact speed as Bruce talks. You know, we didn't have the audio book, we just put your voice in our head and we went through it like that. Steel Mill, anybody here actually see Steel Mill? How about that?
He's lying.
Couple of drugs. You become a bona fide quasi-legend locally in 2 very distinct locales. Jersey and Richmond, Virginia, are hotbeds of Steel Mill mania, right?
Yeah.
And yet, this was not a cover band.
No.
You were doing original material with a band called Steel Mill, and eventually drawing thousand people to a show.
Well, you know, with the cover band, you're initially trying to imagine yourself as the Rolling Stones or the Beatles or the Animals, whatever you're playing at a particular moment. With your original material, you are trying to imagine yourself as yourself, which is a very different thing.
Did you ever think only 40 people showed up tonight or less?
Yeah.
We better start throwing in some Clearwater or something.
Or reimagining myself, you know. It's like that happened. You know, we played some clubs where we could skip through with a good amount of original music, but then had to throw in Creedence was always a sure winner. You know, so.
You talk about how a band is a non-realistic mathematical equation. 1 + 1 does not equal 4.
Right.
1 + 1 equals 3.
If it's good.
If it's good.
Yeah.
Steel Mill, that was a 3.
Yeah, that band worked real well for 2 or 3 years. It was kind of a heavy metal blues band. We played with our shirts off, and we had hair down to here. And there was a lot of soloing, and I had a Les Paul and a Marshall stack. And so it was deeply in that genre. But the music was pretty original. And you can go to YouTube and hear a ton of it still is on there. You know?
But, right. Don't pull it up quite yet, folks, because not everybody knows the lyrics. That would be different.
He's guilty, he's guilty. All right, a few folks. There was a lot of silence out there.
The thing also about the book, Bruce, is that you establish really very, very quickly this concept that a rock and roll band is not like the Monkees where they all live in the same house and get along and all agree on what they're going to do. You were essentially some form of dictator, tyrant, not a democracy. You chose the band, you made the band, you enforced the band. Was that the case with Still Mill, or?
Actually, the guy that kind of got the whole thing rolling was Vincent Mad Dog Lopez. He initially got me together with Danny, and it was Danny, Vinny, there was a guy named Little Vinny, and it was the four of us. So he kind of, I was originally going to join another cover band for the money that were making some money in Asbury Park, which I needed at the time. That didn't work out, and we ended up putting together our own band, which was first called Child and then called Steel Mill. But shortly after, Steel Mill was a democracy. So with small unit democracy, it's very, very tough to make work. So after Steel Mill, I decided I was going to go under my own name and play with my own band. And it was basically kind of a benevolent dictatorship. Because rock bands generally, particularly you're in your 20s and you're with all of these misfits, all right? No, everybody is crazy because that's the people that are drawn to the field. And, you know, people are hitting one another and fighting and getting thrown in jail, and you're trying to bail them out, and then you bail them out, and other guys going to jail, and leaving marijuana plants on the front seats of their car. The car gets thrown away, they go to the cops, say my car was stolen, they get thrown right in jail. You know, I mean, there was a long list. These things are going on constantly and every day. So a gentle, controlling hand is not such a bad thing.
So for the good of rock and roll, you
exactly.
took over. This is the case by the time, eventually this is going to just become the greatest, you know, jukebox referencing interview in the planet. Eventually you get around to that fabulous Greetings from Asbury Park. The second track has this line to it. Oh, growing up.
Not so good. I'm finished. It's over now.
That's all. Well, you didn't waste a lot of ink on writing that. So this is like, okay, so this is like 1973. Oh, growing up. All right, I think we got it. How did you have such bodaciousness to think that you well, not how did you think it, but what were the fears, or what are the things that you faced down as you decided to wield that kind of artistic control in making really the first bona fide record that you did?
You know, I've been around quite a bit by the time I got signed. You know, I mean, we were big fish in Asbury Park and in central New Jersey, so I'd had a lot of people telling me I was great, and I chose to believe them. So by the time I got to making a record, I'd had a lot of experience. You know, I'd been across the United States and back. I'd played on the West Coast and played down south. You know, I'd had a lot of road experience, and you know, and I saw that we were pretty good. We were as good as it was getting. And I listened to the radio, and I said, I don't know, we're as good as any of those guys. You know, or many of those guys. So by the time I made my first record, you're a combination of overflowing with confidence, and you think, of course, that you're a complete phony and it's going to crumble in the next 30 seconds. But I went in, you know, I had these new songs I wrote, and I thought they were pretty good, and so...
How long between when you first played your stuff in an office at CBS Records, how long between the end of that interview and did you get the news that, hey, guess what, we're interested in what you're
No,
got?
I talk about it in the book. I said it was really, it was bizarre because we went up to Black Rock, they used to call it, and of course, you know, I read about it in the book that, you know, you're nervous, but I'm thinking like, well, you know, I've been around for 8 or 9 years and I've made a living, and if this doesn't work out, I can still sing and play the way I can when I walked in here. Wait a minute. And I'll still be who I am. You know, if we go up and they don't sign us or they don't like us, you know, nothing will actually have been lost because we had nothing. And then by the time I got to John Hammond's office, I almost believed it. You know? But
that record, Greetings from Asbury Park, Bruce, why? Why is there no guitar on that record?
Well, I went in and I had a guitar, I played Saint in the City, I played one song, and John Hammond said, you gotta be on Columbia Records. So that was, that was good. Yeah. And they said, but you gotta play for Clive Davis next week. So Clive Davis was the way he came back. I went in, I auditioned for him, and they signed me. You know, but there was no guitar because initially they wanted me to be purely a folk singer, which is what I looked like I was when I came up to John Hammond's office. And John Hammond wanted it to be a completely solo album with just me and the guitar. We wanted to make a rock record, and so we settled in the middle with sort of a rhythm section with acoustic music. I like the way it came out now. But
Is there a defining part? A note to host, never step on applause. That's a very, very bad thing to do. Is there a story? Did you have a story in your head that is the story of that record, Greeting from Asbury Park?
I didn't have, I had my heroes that I was kind of following. I had Dylan, Van Morrison, they were big influences for me at the time. And you know, I didn't have a particular, I didn't think I had a story, but I was kind of living one at the time because I'm in Asbury Park. I'm living in an abandoned beauty salon. And
Accent on abandoned.
and so I'm there, I'm with all these sort of assorted street characters who were in Asbury at the time. And the record got mixed up with all of those people and that setting. And basically it was semi-autobiographical, a lot of the music. And the lyrics came out of carnival life and boardwalk life. And so it was, it comes to you. It just kind of came to you.
That was kind of like Act One of the Jersey education to the uninitiated, people who've never been around, never seen it, grown up on the West Coast, for example. Act Two was definitely the wild, the innocent, and B Street shuffle. Because let's just say, how about this? The boys in their high heels. Oh, Sandy, their skins are so white, man, oh man. From listening to that record, if you were on the West Coast, you were scared to death going to Asbury. Between the greasers and the boys in their high heels. What's going on? Jersey.
It was all the greasers that came down from up north, you know, and who with no tans and dressed in the sharkskin pants and the winkle picker shoes, and they would invade the town on the weekend and threaten your life. And it was all that came from a lot of life experience and a certain amount of imagination.
All right, now, this is not necessarily a call and response. Everybody will remember this. And just shout out, tell the person right next to you, your recollection of this, where you were and what you were doing the first time you heard the song Born to Run. Just pizza parlor in Lakewood. See, it's a specific recollection, is it not? It is the equal The Ed Sullivan Show with the night the revolution was televised with Elvis Presley. It's the equal to the first time you heard "Please Please Me" on the radio. The first time you heard "Born to Run." Now, this, if I was to be bodacious, this is the moment for many of us where you transferred from the specificness of Jersey to the heart and soul of the United States of America.
We weren't selling any records the other way, so we had to try something else out. And we made 2 albums, and they hadn't done well, and I was about to be bounced off the record label. And but I was thinking broader at the time, and
how old were you?
I was 24.
So you were that guy that you're singing about in Born to Run. You are that guy who's thinking, on one hand, I gotta get out of here, but then maybe questioning whether or not you ever truly can.
Well, we'd done some touring by then, so we'd been around the States, and we were road dogs and did a lot of playing. So I knew that I was, I had a foot out the door, and we always came back to New Jersey because we felt safe there. And Born to Run was just the next song I wrote. I mean, I didn't know if it was going to be a hit or not be a hit. I mean, I thought, when you listen to something, you think it's good, you think people are going to like it, but that hadn't been the case up to that point. So,
did you see in your head the same movie when you wrote Born to Run that we see in our heads when we listen to Born to Run?
I think the interesting thing is that you mentioned movie there, and of course it's the film festival, but Born to Run, cinematic. And that came from both life experience of being in Asbury on a Saturday night where you had the circuit and all the hot rods going round and round every Friday and Saturday night. So that life was there in front of me, but it also came from every B hot rod picture I'd ever seen.
Like Thunder Road with
That's
Robert Mitchum.
Great Robert Mitchum. I don't know if you guys have never seen it. He plays opposite, I think it's Kylie Smith, Louis Prima's. I think she stars in it with him, and his son is in it. But it's a great little noir picture, and I saw all of those at the time. Every B hot rod picture that came, so a lot of it came out of that too. And then the basic sound was widescreen. We'd been up until then. We'd been kind of. It was a very local form of filmmaking, but once Born to Run, it was widescreen. It was something that it gave you a sense of wide open spaces and a world and a life outside of New Jersey. So that was a big thing.
Did it not also test the physics of making a record? Is it not a technological problem to get a song as crusader-ish and huge as Jungleland, as the last track of the side?
Well, in those days, there was a big thing about how much music you could fit on a side, which, we really ran into trouble on Darkness on the Edge of Town. So there was an element of that. But the main problem we had was we didn't know what we were doing. We were really very clueless about making records. Jimmy Iovine, who became the engineer. I'm not sure if he engineered anything before our record. And none of us really knew. We just went in and made noises until it sounded right coming out of the speaker. So all I remember about Born to Run is it was 8 in the morning and we were trying to do something called mixing, which means you have all of these tracks, maybe 72, which you balance down to 16, because that was all you had in those days. And now you've got to take 16 separate things and break them down to 2, which is your stereo sound. So you're trying to mix all of this down. It's 8 o'clock in the morning. There's no computer. There's no computer mixing. Everyone is moving all of the faders manually, so you have 4 guys lined up with their hands over the other guy, trying to get the sax solo up, trying to get the drums up here, the guitar up there, trying to make sure the echo changes here. And when we were done, it was done, and we were never able to do it again. It was something that had only happened once. They wanted us to go back in and put more voice on the record. Couldn't be done. We went back. We couldn't get anywhere near the sound that we caught that one time. But you only have to do it once.
From that record, we learned an awful lot about what it is to be an American and what it is to be a man. We continued the lessons. Periodically, you gotta get up in the morning, you gotta make pancakes for the kids. It's something a man has got to do.
I found that out very late.
A man has got to go up and pack his lunchbox and go to work each day. He's got to do that. But a man also has to pay his taxes, which you did not do for your entire life until I believe someone said, "Hey, Mr. Time Magazine Newsweek cover, have you ever paid your taxes?" And the answer was,
we were Willie Nelson in reverse. We didn't pay. First of all, I never met anyone in New Jersey who paid any tax. I mean, you have to understand, the entire state wasn't paying any taxes. And certainly, no one under 25 was paying any taxes. So we never paid any tax. And then when we got with Mike Appel, he was handling all our business. And his thing was, we're not paying any fucking taxes. And so years went by, and greetings, wild Anderson, born around, all of this time went by, nobody's paying any taxes. And I mean, me, the band, no one I know. So finally some guy at IRS must have got smart and said, who's this guy on the cover of these magazines? Let's see what he's doing. And they came after us, and I had to work for a couple of years, like for somebody else every night.
By the way, when you say work for a couple of years, you had to go off on those tours that we all saw you on. But you were not working for yourself.
Well, not for a long time, not until 1980.
1980?
Yeah, because not only did I have to pay all the taxes that I hadn't paid, and then bills that I hadn't paid, because we didn't pay any bills either. It's like, many taxes, didn't pay any bills, the band didn't pay any bills, the band didn't pay any tax, don't pay for everybody. And then we had to pay lawyers. So all of this went on, and then we made records that were expensive because we didn't know how to make records. And this went on till 1980. In 1980, I think I had about $20,000 to my name, and which would have sounded like a lot of money when I was 20. When you're 30, you've been doing it for a while. But
that's like Castile's money.
That's good Castile's money. But it was just, the whole thing was, but most people's early careers are a mess. And, mainly because when you get in the music business, the cards are stacked in favor of the business and they're stacked against the musicians. Well, because what do musicians know? They don't know anything, They don't know about numbers, or they don't know about business side of things. I would have signed, as I say in a book, I would have signed anybody's jockey shorts to get to make a record, It was, I would have signed anything. I did sign anything, and I don't regret it, maybe things worked out, obviously, but at the time, it could have gone a lot worse, but that's the only chance you have. Your chance comes along, and you dive in, no matter what shit you're diving into, because you came out of this tiny little town, and there's a million musicians, and I think you had this metaphor when it came to acting. I said, well, there's a million musicians, and maybe a few of those learn how to play, and maybe a few of those play with a few local guys, maybe a few of those make a demo, maybe a few of those actually get to make a record, maybe a few of those sell a few records. But if you keep dragging it down, you know your chances are really, 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 really small. And so you've got to have the insane hunger, ego, ambition, and desperation to take any chance, anything that comes your way, and try to bust those doors down. You know, so paying the no tax. I had to pay taxes for a long time, but I pay them now. So.
You do, yeah. Although it looks like you're not going to have to pay so much now if this thing goes on. Listen, I think everybody here would like to invest, an hour each on Darkness on You at the Town. She sits on the porch of her daddy's house, and all her dreams are torn. And also, the river.
That was really the first record that really was influenced by movies.
It is the most, I think, evocative image that comes out of your poetry, Bruce, is that no matter where we live, there is this dark cloud out there just beyond the city limits.
It's a nice thought. But it was, it was a classic noir title. And I kind of run through a lot of my rock influences. At that point, I was deep into the Animals and the working class blues, but I was also beginning through one of my great mentors, who was Mr. Landau, Mr. John Landau, who was a film critic, was here tonight, and he was a film critic and began to get me to watch films. I think the first thing I remember that had a huge impact on me was obviously John Ford's Grapes of Wrath. There was something, the humanism in it was something that touched me deeply, deeply, deeply. And I said, yeah, I want some of that in my music. And then comes Promised Land, Racing on the Street. And I wanted the same humanism that he got in his films. And then I got hooked into the noir writers, James M. Cain, and then that sort of hooked me into Postman, Noise Rings Twice, and Double Indemnity, all the great noir films.
And these are all about heroes that are yearning for something that they can almost only get by being crooks.
Yeah. So.
Legitimate wealth or legitimate security is out of their reach. As you say in your book, it's kind of like a biblical record that you have to divest all that is unnecessary in your life in order to survive. And sometimes that's decency.
Well, that was at the time. That was really what I had to do. It was like I said. This was in the middle of we didn't pay the taxes.
No, see, you're
to go back.
You think that record was about you? No, it was about me, and it was about all of us. That's what that was. That's who you were talking to. The thing about all of these, the stuff that goes down is that when you perform, which I have never seen one of your shows, I don't think anybody has, in which we haven't understood that there is a great and complex and yet very visceral story that you have told us. Because when you sing any one of those songs that are in your set list, you are not really just recreating how they were recorded, but you are reliving the moment that they were created.
Basically, you tell a story to save your life. I mean, that's really what your motivation is. I mean, at some point when I was very young, of course, I felt like I was drowning. You're not living, and so, I think the writer tells a story to save his life. To experience life in its fullest. I mean, what a good rock song is? A little 3 minutes, 3 minutes of bliss and compressed living. That's why you can get so excited in such a short period of time. but also, you know, your motivation. Your motivation is to keep yourself afloat. So it's that life or death hunger. That was what I wanted my characters to be about. I wanted them to be chasing. That's what I wanted to communicate to my audience, that life awaits you, but taking it is a rough and tumble business.
You had to tell that story by cherry picking 10 of 57 different
There were a lot of songs. Wrote a lot of songs.
Very different from Born to Run, in which there were just what?
There's one extra song from Born to Run.
Man, oh man. Then a lot of those that I know this only because many of us have seen the documentary, that fabulous. I'd like to kiss that guy who had a black and white videotape camera and hung around with him for a while. We heard tracks that ended up on the river from that. It seems as though that yearning and that cost is manifest in the book. You say it's about your sister Virginia and her brother-in-law, the decent, hardworking people with just JOB jobs that are just maintaining their dignity and their place on the food chain. In this 2-volume set that starts off with the ties that bind. You've been hurt and you're all cried out, you said. Pushing people out of your way. This is, there is a...
I'm going to start doing this live myself.
There is a different brand of yearning then, and if I was to be so bold, I would say it's because now whoever that guy is that started off living one great summer day and night and Born to Run and started wrestling with the darkness on the other town, now probably has a wife and a kid and a brand of responsibility. And man, it ain't quite living up to the dream as promised in Colgate toothpaste commercial.
Well, this was 1980. This was post-Watergate. So the whole country had lived through, obviously, the Vietnam War, but Watergate, which kind of validated every crook's philosophy on the street, you know. And all I remember thinking was I wanted to do something that was not that, you know. I wanted to deliver something that felt in opposition to all that we'd experienced in a certain way. And the river was my shot at it, you know. It was about people trying to live straight up and move forward and work hard and support their families and you know, try to find what the meaning of a good life what that might consist of. You know?
It's as though the struggles that those people take on living by the banks of the river, because they stuck it out, and because they never lost faith in that aspect of the promised land that is the United States of America, that it gave way to the biggest record in Bruce Springsteen's career. Born in the USA. And here it is. We made a promise. We swore we'd always remember.
I was going to throw that one off. Stevie convinced me to keep that song on. And I remember at the time thinking, it's too glib.
You thought it was too glib?
It's too glib. I think I still think that. But at the same time, Stevie said, no, man, it's about, you know, the band and the brotherhood of the band and the fans. And at that time, I gave him the benefit of the doubt. I said, okay, let's put it on. We played it a lot. We've played it an awful lot ever since. But I was always a little frightened of it. And, you know, and the whole record, I always have mixed feelings about, you know.
Really?
Yeah.
About this, you said that even the title track, Born in the USA, that it comes up as a bit of an auditory Rorschach test, that everybody who hears it hears what they want to hear.
Well, that's pop music in general. I mean, I always say that's how this land is your land ends up being sung around the campfire at the Boy Scout camp. So that, you know, you're dealing, that's just a part of popular music.
Do you feel good about the fact, well, that's not the way I want to put it. It says, do you ever think your fans are wrong when they come up and say, hey, this is what that song means to me? Do you ever, you don't try to correct them, do you? You don't say, hey man, that ain't what that song is. Because that would just not be right. Don't rob us of that conviction we have in our bedrooms late at night when we're telling our story, Bruce, through your music. But, well, I remember being hearing that there was a criticism that it was jingoistic somehow, and yet the lyric is, "I had a brother at Quezon." That is not a jingoistic reference in any way, shape, or form.
I think what's it depends on how people use popular music, and you have to deal with the fact that people hear the music, the beat. What was the first thing people were frightened of with rock and roll? The beat. The beat is a classic piece of thing. And then they hear the chorus, and if they have the time or inclination, maybe they get into some of the verses. So that's the way the political rock and roll ball bounces. And the song, which I still feel is one of the best songs I've ever written, the artist always have a chance to reinterpret it, which I've done many, many times in different ways. But there's something about the original recording that I still feel is at its best, you know. It's one of those things.
You deal with the very, very personal, and then I think as time went by, you then to deal with you dealt with the greater philosophy and also more historic areas. I think Vietnam has this undercurrent through certainly Born to Run and Darkness and the River is that some of them went off and fought. Born in the USA really does take its sort of head on.
Well, you know, I had some friends, very close friends of mine, Bobby Mueller and Ron Colvin, both guys that came home in wheelchairs, and I didn't go. I was stone cold draft dodger, you know. I pulled the whole Alice's restaurant. I'm sorry, sir, I don't understand what you're saying. I'm high on LSD, and I did everything in the draft dodgers textbook, you know. So perhaps I felt guilty about that later on. I had friends that went. I had friends that went and died. I had friends later on who were seriously hurt, and whether it was that or whether it was just the fact that it was an event that defined a generation. And if you were going to write about the world, if you were going to write about who we are at this particular moment, if you were going to write about your place, you know, if you're going to try to seize your little moment in history, and which are all things that I wanted to deliver to my audience, it was something that needed to be reckoned with, and that didn't happen in books or film. People got until quite a bit after the war ended. And so it was something that I felt I had to come to terms with myself and I needed to sing about, and I felt was ballsy enough to believe
it was sort of
needed to hear it.
It was sort of like the national baggage that we were carried around, and you say in your book that as we age, the weight of that unsorted baggage becomes just heavier and heavier. And yet there is still always, to use the Vietnam allegory, there's still always light at the end of the tunnel, and it often is a tunnel of love, which is one of the, it's just one of the most well thought out treaties on togetherness and making the choice to be in love, and proving that, it ain't no secret, baby. You've been around a time or two, but I don't know, babe. Maybe you've been around two. Those are two equals coming together and say, let's make it go.
Well,
that's faith in the future, my friend. You can't be nearly as pessimistic as you put your black outfit puts out.
That's the conversation. Those lines are the conversation everybody's having around 2:30 a.m. in the bar night when everybody starts looking pretty good. So that was my little last call
Well, now maybe it's because we're all growing up at the same time, but you said that work is work, but life is life, and life trumps art always. Is that not a lesson that you sort of got to learn over time?
Oh yeah.
Have you feel as though you've completely learned it?
You know, generally you learn, you beat yourself to death before you learn that one, and particularly if your art and your music was something that you clung to as a life preserver and as something, as a safe space, and you think you can live there, all artists at some point, I think, believe they can live within their art. And what you learn, either quickly or painfully and slowly, is that you can. At the end of the day, it's just your job, it's just your work, and that life awaits you outside of those things. And so once you get outside of those things and you let the world happen to you. See, in music, we make our own little worlds. We make them and we sell them to you, and you can live in them for a while, and they can be important. They can get you through the day, get you through the night. They can change the way you think. They can change the way you look, the way you dress, the way you approach your own life, or they can just thrill you with 3 minutes of bliss, But they can't give you a life, At the end of the day, we're all stuck on earth here trying to carve out a life for ourselves. And so that took me a long time to learn that lesson. Thanks, Patty. And took me a long time to learn it, and it was a tremendous struggle for me, but I found that I like to happen to the world. All artists like to happen to the world. We don't like the world happening to us, because we've had enough of that already. It happened to us really, really heavily at some point, as it does to most people. And so you said, whoa, I've had enough of that. I'm gonna create my own world, and I'm gonna live there, but you can't live there. So you gotta let the world in, you gotta let it happen to you, let the chips fall where they may, and that's where life resides, the rest of your life resides.
Bruce, I have notes. I have notes on 11 more albums.
Okay.
And the thing that I think we are all reminded of over and over again, that you continue to address that very theme. And you continue to talk to us in every one of these records. There is always some sort of track, or there's some sort of idea that we should just be swept away in the nostalgia of joining the rock and roll caravan by going off to the Bruce Springsteen and the E Street Band. That will forever make us feel great that that's the way we spent the night, make us forever happy that we were all born in the USA, and will make us always want to keep our eyes out for the girls in their summer clothes and celebrate all that they need. But I think that what you have done more special, I think, for all of us, is that you have made us part of something greater than ourselves. And